Okay. All right. All right, cuz. Welcome to Because Podcast, episode 1. We're getting started here. This is our first episode, and I can't remember the title of it. I'm looking it up here. Because Podcast. What did we say oh yeah. Episode 1 is, we'll put it in the notes, I guess, but Apes Together Strong, when the apes went to war with the bears on Wall Street was I think what we said, and we'll get to that. We're going to our plan was always to sort of look at this from the game theory of everything, and the major lens that you and I have for game theory has always been poker, since we've been playing for I don't know how long, going almost 20 years now. Not so long since we went to the World Series together in 2018, but nonetheless, I think our plan was to always try to start things off with a poker hand, and we do have a poker hand to talk about. One that came from the World Series of Poker circuit event. Let me just see here. Can you see this? I'm sharing. This
Yep.
is from my Hendon Mob. This is the most recent one.
Mhm.
So the WSOP, I think, for the first time came to Toronto to do a circuit event and a ring event. You could win a ring. I guess at the World Series of Poker, you either win bracelets or rings. I guess you got to go to Vegas or Europe for the actual bracelet events, but we get a ring event for the first time. And this was a $2,000 buy-in at the what's the casino's name there? I can't even remember now. We used to go there and play
It's like the Great Canadian. It used to be called Woodbine.
Woodbine, and we used to play cash there, right? Yeah, it's so anyway, they've done a lot of renovations. The place is looking pretty good, and they had this new tournament, and Daniel Negreanu was scheduled to come back and play. It was a $2,000 buy-in, and I can't remember. You had a piece of me. I can't remember how much. What did you have?
10%.
10%, so $200. And then you and I were looking at the top prize. It was a multi-day entry event. I think there was Thursday, uh, Friday, and maybe no, actually, I think it was 2 days. I think it was Friday and Saturday were day one, and
Mhm.
Sunday was the day two. Yeah, that's what I remember. And I came in to play Friday, and as it turns out, I think Negrano didn't. He wasn't coming in until Saturday. So if you had any chance of playing with Negrano, you had to actually survive into day two. And I remember when we were looking at it with the number of entries, we were trying to sort of, as we always do, try to figure out, okay, imagine if you were lucky enough to make it to the final table and take a look at some of the payouts sure in those top prizes, and in particular, what's the top prize. And I think at its height, we figured out like top prize was, I don't know what the final thing was. It was over 400 grand. So your share, 10% share of 400 grand would 40 grand. And I think it's important to remember that that's what you're doing in tournament poker. You're playing obviously at stakes you wouldn't normally play at. And for a buy-in, which is, it's a substantial amount of money, but like $2,000 buy-in allows you to play at a stakes where you could win $400,000, where obviously people who are playing those kinds of stakes where you could win $400,000 in a cash game would be sitting down in front of them with a lot more money than just $2,000. So it's there's a lot of variance, and most people are not going to win anything and not even going to cash, and that is generally how the money is generated to have these huge prizes at the top, and we all sort of want. So there's a bit of a lottery ticket aspect to it. So when you sort of enter into this, you recognize, chances are we're not going to win anything, but there's this opportunity that we should be shooting for, that we could win 400,000, and in your case 40,000, and sort of that was the sort of the agreement we had together in terms of entering in here, I would say. Does that seem fair?
That's right. Yep.
Okay, so I hit the miss share. So I'll get started to the hand. Um, and hopefully you can see that. This is as much as I can remember about the details. It was the last level of the night. So we were around 10 or 11 o'clock at night. As you know, I was having an up and down day, but fortunately things had turned around I think shortly before the dinner break, a couple of levels before the dinner break, and I was doing really well. At one point, it was up to 60, 70 big blinds late in the day. But then as the night had gone on, I mean, things had gotten cold, but I'd also sort of tightened up a little bit as I was starting to think about, hey, you know what? I might make it to bagging chips and surviving into day two. And I think I was playing a little tighter than I probably should have been, and I had dropped down to about 18 big blinds by the time this hand had happened. And so I was in the big blind, and it was a big blind ante. So a big blind that means I have to post one big blind plus one big blind ante. So two big blinds off my 18 big blind stack were already off. Under the gun to my left had a big blind. He had a stack of about 50 big blinds, and he opened to 2.5 big blinds, and it folded to the button, who was just a little bit shorter than him. Both of these guys clearly had me covered and were in much healthier stacks. But he just flatted on the button, and I was looking down at pocket sevens, and at that point, I chose to flat. I didn't choose. I mean, I guess I was thinking about what the options are. Obviously, fold, raise, and then the question is the raise size or just flat, and I chose to flat. What do you think about
You're
that?
never actually folding there.
No, no, folding is
Really
off the
just
table for sure, for sure.
the
What do you think about the flat? What do you think? How do you think about that decision? I guess that's the first decision we got to think about.
yeah, I mean, with two people, it seems like maybe flatting's better. Against one, are you maybe I don't know what if it's right maybe to shove there.
Yeah, I mean,
7-7 against one person, I think you're closer to maybe just shoving, though you might end up in a race there.
I think the for the first question, and so it sounds to me like what you're saying, if you were going to raise, it's an all-in raise. And I think that's right. I
Yeah.
think that's right. The question is, should we raise or should we just flat? I suppose in the context of tournament poker, when there is antes, and the raises are smaller. So he just like I mean I'm only having to put in 1.5 more big blinds. Um, and there's already what I mean, he put in 2.5, he called there's five plus the two I put in seven. So there's seven big blinds in the or 7.5 big blinds when you include small blind who folded. And so I only have to put 1.5. So it's not much to call, but would I rather take it down right now? The question, of course, is like the guy under the gun. So I guess we should talk about our villains. He was a French guy from France, but now living in I think Kitchener. He's a computer programmer. He had just sat down at our table a little bit. He reason he had a big stack because he sort of got lucky with pocket kings, and somebody had I think jacks versus kings, and they went all in, and he got that. He seemed pretty. He seemed like a pretty straightforward tag type player. Uh, um, but like with him opening under the gun, I think he's got a relatively strong range. I think that if I shoved on him, what even if he was alone, I'm thinking that he might be probably calling with any overcard. So I think at best I'm a race, and
Crushed at worst.
I'm crushed at worst, obviously as a bigger pair, and at best I'm racing.
Yeah.
And then in terms of Button, Button was actually a bit of a nemesis for him. He was a good player, definitely good. And we had gotten into it. He had made some attempts to steal my blinds earlier, and I had played back at him, calling. And then when flops were range advantage for me as the caller, I would check raise him or even donk lead, and it was frustrating him. And so I thought, hey, great. Earlier on, I was thinking I'm going to teach this guy not to try to attack my blinds, but he was relentless. He kept coming after them, and I quickly realized, like he was just good and he wasn't going to be dissuaded. And then he started getting the better of me, and I started letting him steal my blinds. And it was not he was a tough character for sure. So when he flats there, I don't know, like I'm kind of worried that, I mean, I don't think I think he would have re-raised any premium holdings, but I don't. Yeah, I think I'm ahead of him. I'm less worried about his range, but I mean, I did sort of take the opportunity after we talked about this hand a little bit before. I did take the opportunity to uh, um, look at some of the ranges. So why don't we look at my range first? This is from GTO Wizard. Yeah, here's my range. I'm not sure. Are you seeing that?
Nope. I'm still seeing the
Oh
summary.
yeah, sorry. Sorry. I think it might have changed it
There it
now.
is. Yep.
You got it? Okay. So what it should say is my range on big blind. Yeah. So you can see here the solver really likes a call for sevens. Actually, really likes a call. There's a huge calling range here. Uh
Wow, that's a lot of suited calling. Yeah. Again,
yeah,
because
pretty much
you've
all the
got,
suiteds are calling.
yeah, you've got money in the pot. You-
Yeah, it's only 1.5 more big blinds, and as we said, there's like 7.5 already in there. So you can see that you're pretty much calling anything suited, anything Broadway.
So
You
yeah.
are raising, but the raising seems to be premium pocket pairs.
Mhm,
A little bit of mixed strategy, I suppose, with nines. That's
mhm.
sort of the point where it's a bit mixed, but tens. I'm not sure what the dark here. I'm pretty. You know what? I think the dark might be
Shove.
all ins. I think those are shoves. Yeah, but the other ones are probably raises that are not shoves, which I guess kind of makes sense if you're aces and kings and queens. You kind of want.
Oh, this is from a solver, and so uh it's seen all the action prior to got the button called and stuff.
Yeah, so I programmed this. I programmed it exactly as open 2.5 big blinds. You put in GTO you can put in the stacks. You can even put that it was tournament. And I put the stacks of me, button and stuff, and the action that he raised, and there was one flat. So
Mm.
like after the raise so this I should say this is my range. And I can show you villain's range as well, but maybe I'll get to that in a second. I'm just looking at our range first. And so I mean, sevens is clearly a flat, as are many pocket pairs. And it's certainly not a mixed strategy. So I mean, I think the inclination at the time was to flat. I'm not saying I didn't think about shoving, but I think you correctly point out, because there was two players, and just because I was just so incentivized to flat, I just flatted. And then, of course, I'm hoping and loving and the opportunity to what do you call it? Flop a set. But a medium pocket pair, it's not unreasonable to. I don't think you're just playing set mining strategy in its entirety. I think I mean, obviously, it's going to be rare that you're going to have a flop come and everything's under your cards, but chances are you're going to be at least. There's a good chance that you could be at least second, higher than second pair or something like that, and so you might be able to still play some flops that you don't flop a set. But anyway, I flatted, and the flop came Jack Jack 8, a paired board, which is always interesting. And under the gun checks, and button bets 3 big blinds. And at that point, I actually folded, and under the gun folded, and the hand was over. And then the question becomes, what should I do there? And I have to say, I paused a bit, and at that point I was thinking of shoving, sort of check raise shoving all in. And I I do think, and we discussed this a little bit, I think after the night was over, uh, um, And I had once the night was over and we were bagging because I had a relationship with this guy and I was talking to him after, and he told me, what did he tell me? He told me he had pocket fives, and obviously that would have been a great shove, and he would have folded, I'm sure, to my check raise. But even if he didn't, even if he thought I was doing this, this was a rainbow flop. Even if he thought I was doing this on a draw or something like that, it would have been great to have that call. But I guess I put his because I also put in the GTO solver his range. Let me see if I can get that up now. Is
Mhm.
that is
Yep.
that showing now? You got it should be buttons. So
Yep. Button villain range.
this is buttons villain range exactly. And I have to say when I just in my head at the time, I wasn't worried about him having a jack for flop trips. I kind of felt like if he had flop trips, he would have, from his perspective, his nemesis was actually the undergun raiser, who probably, because he checks, probably has ace king, ace queen, king queen, or some kind of overcards. And I would think at least, and I knew this guy, he was a good player. I think he would have slow played trips, hoping that the turn would bring a high card, which might, entice under the gun to actually start betting that he could then at that point in position extract more value.
Mhm.
So I wasn't worried about a jack, but do you think that's reasonable? Like, do you think he would have bet a jack here like this? It seems silly to me.
No, no, yeah, he calls. You said he only calls it, and it was rainbow board, so he's not looking to charge
Well,
any.
and again, like under the gun, who was pretty fit or fold, he didn't see bet, so he under the gun, who was the original pre-flop raiser, if you recall, he checked the flop, and that's when Button bet.
Mhm.
And I just think that my read on under the gun, he was pretty fit or fold, was that he had overcards, and if I had been in his position, I would have checked the trips, hoping that an overcard hits the turn.
Sorry, you're talking about
The
the
button.
under the gun. Oh, you're talking about the button or the under the gun guy?
Well, under the gun check. So like
Yeah.
I,
So the
I
button.
put under the gun on when he raises, and
Yeah.
and I put him on overcards as soon as he checks the flop. So he's got ace king, ace queen, king queen, some kind of overcards. I'm presuming he
Yeah.
checks the flop, which isn't unreasonable, right? Like it's. I mean, it's a paired board. I think he should probably be betting there, but regardless, it's not unreasonable for him to say, "Hey, against two opponents, maybe I'll check and see what happens."
Mhm.
Um, like if I was him, I might check and call one, hoping to get something happening on the turn.
Mhm.
Um, but as soon as, because like I just don't think
What's
he's betting a
interesting,
jack.
huh?
I just don't think Button's betting a jack.
No, no. And it is good to check. You know what? I just realized you have all those jack suited your range.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So
Hmm.
yeah, for so the definitely under the gun guy checks, and then the button he doesn't bet a jack. You're right.
Yeah. So so like I mean, it's not that he doesn't have jacks in his range. We can see his range here. This
Yeah.
is his range, and he does have a fair amount of jack X as well.
Mhm.
He's probably three betting jacks. To be honest, I mean, this is the range that the solver says, but
Mhm.
my reading on Button is that pre-flop, he would have definitely, it says here a mixed strategy, but pre-flop, Button definitely would have raised with jacks. And I think he would have raised with tens and even nines, to be frank.
Mhm.
So really the only pair I was worried about that he might flat with was eights, because I think that he's flatting eights. I have sevens, so I block sevens, but he's flatting sevens as well, the remaining pair. But I think he's flatting sixes, fives, fours, threes, and deuces, which the
Yeah.
solver would show. So there's a lot of pocket pairs. I mean, again, we don't know what he didn't show, but when I talked to him later, he said he had fives. Well, at the time, I remember thinking, I've got sevens. I do have to worry about eights, but honestly, I didn't worry about tens, nines, or above. I'm just really tens or nines. So I don't think he has a jack. I don't think he has tens or nines. Maybe he has pocket eights, and if he does, well, more power to him. But to be frank, it's like you say, I have a fair amount of jack X in my range too. even if he has eights, maybe when I check raise shove, he folds them. I don't know. But certainly sixes, fives, fours, threes, and deuces he does have. And at this point, like, I think I'm not worried about undergun razor at this point. Once he checks, like I think, like I mean, I don't think he's still playing a jack. I suppose he could be if he had raised with ace jack suited and he checked looking to check raise. I guess that is a possibility as well. But I think I myself, and I did not put this in the solver, but at the time I thought, I should really shove here. And in the end, I didn't. In the end, I just folded. And then very quickly, the fitter fold French guy to my left under the gun, who was the original raiser, he folded too. And Button, my nemesis, took it down.
Mhm.
And so I was left at that point with well, it was a 2.5 raise, 3.5. So I was left with 15 big blinds, right? Because I had to call the 2.5 raise, plus I had put in the big blind ante. So 3.5, and I was left at 15. Whereas if I had shoved, I would have taken that pot,
Mhm.
which would have been the 15 I have, plus the 7.5 of the pot, plus he bet 10. So I would have taken, like, let's say I shoved and call, and he doesn't call, I would have had the 10 big blinds. So I would have had a 25 big blind stack there. Plus
Mhm.
also a mentality to continue playing properly to try to garner a big stack. Because as it turns out, just a few more hands happened, and uh, um, we ended up bagging, and then we were into day two. But I knew that it was going to be a whole other level on day two. And so even though I had about 15 big blinds or so, by the time you get to day two, you're going to have 11 or 12 big blinds. And you're probably going to be just at this point looking to bubble because you're going, that's, at that point, just the way ICM pressure goes, you're going to be so close to bubbling, and there's going to you're going to be just folding, trying to make the money.
Mhm.
And obviously my incentive was to play. I was hoping the next day that Daniel Negreanu would be at my table. I was going to be able to sort of say I got to play with Daniel Negreanu. He was, first of all, I don't know if you can. He was really nice. Uh, when we got there the next day before play started, he was taking pictures with fans, and just being a overall huge poker ambassador, not only for poker in general, but obviously for this event. He's
Mhm.
originally from Toronto. He had a lot of friends there and stuff like that were coming to talk to him. But like I just can't say enough about him, and how great it was to meet him in person and be in the tournament. He was sitting at the table next to me. I think he started the day with a slightly bigger stack than me, but he actually ended up getting. We both obviously made the bubble, and then he got knocked out shortly before me, and what have you. But like I basically just bubbled the stack, and yeah, and that's the hand. And as you know, we were happy at the time, so you got your money back and a little bit more. But our opportunity to try to shoot for that 400,000 and 40,000 to you, I don't know. I was, like I said, I think to some extent I lost the mentality of going for that, and I just was, my incentives were to try to make it to day two. I wanted to play with Daniel, or at least meet with Daniel. Obviously, if I got eliminated that night, I wouldn't be coming back on Sunday. I didn't know if he was going to make it. He could have been eliminated on his day one B event for sure. But like, regardless, and I have to admit, if I'm really being honest, there was another incentive. I was playing in this tournament, and one of the people I work with, she's one of the colleagues that works across the hall from me in my office. Her husband was actually, he's a budding poker player as well, plays online, and he had actually won a seat into this tournament. I hadn't won a seat. We ended up obviously buying an entry, but he had won a seat, and I was hoping to play with him and do well. And because I work with his wife all the time, and they all sort of know, oh, I'm a bit of a poker player, and I've been at the World Series, and I kind of like, it was okay. Well, I should do as well as that guy at least. If I get knocked out early and I don't cash, it's going to look like, well, how much of a poker player are you, Will? Like, it's like, I heard you were good, but what the hell? You can't even make the money. And so I think there was a constellation of things sort of trying to drive me towards, okay, you got to at least make it to day two and meet Dan. You got to at least cash so you've got something to show, as
Mhm.
opposed to actually going for it and going for that big prize. And yeah, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, you're you're the one who put in money hoping to win 40 grand, and we
Yeah,
ended up,
well, I mean, I certainly don't think you should be thinking about your coworker.
yeah, yeah, no, for sure.
Costing
It's
me an extra 39 grand.
yeah, that's true.
The 900 I got back, I think, from my
Yeah.
200, something like that. So,
Yeah,
but
you made money, but you didn't make anywhere near the money that we were dreaming about on playing in day one. Yeah.
Mhm. um, but I don't know. I mean, I guess it all depends on, yeah, all the reasons or what you're trying to accomplish, you know. So
Hmm.
I don't know if there's apart from game theory, strategically within a hand, you know, what's the game theory of sort of overall sort of the way you're what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah,
I think or I guess like the old almost like the old scared money saying, right?
yeah,
Scared
absolutely.
money ain't gonna make money. And I think
I was definitely playing scared there for sure.
yeah, I mean it seems like you had it all worked out in your head. Hey, this guy doesn't have a jack. You knew that the under the gun guy, he's probably got the overcards. Then this guy's not gonna bet a jack.
I was not worried about him at all. I was watching him like to my left because I knew
Yeah.
like he's making an action. I got to make action. So part of me is wondering what's this guy gonna do. But I was watching him, and I had that feeling that he was gonna muck. I just
Hmm.
and he mucked. He didn't even think about it. He just mucked immediately.
Hmm.
So like I had a good read on that guy.
Hmm.
Totally. I it was definitely playing scared. I
Hmm.
was thinking about it because in contrast to the obviously we had the World Series, the main event just happen, and I sent you that video of Doug Polk. We'll put it in the line notes for this one, but of analyzing the hand by what's her face um what's her name again, the Canadian, Kirsten Foxen.
Yes.
Yeah. And how she had run that huge bluff that ended up getting her knocked out. And I just love how Doug had analyzed that. First of all, like he was, yeah, GTO wise, it was probably slightly bad bluff, but not as bad as everyone was saying. It was not a total punt. And but more importantly, just the fact that she was going for it at like a much higher stakes, right? Like
Mhm.
she probably could have folded herself to the final table, been the first woman in the final table in I don't know how many years, and she was like, I'm not going for that. I'm going for the bracelet. And just being a fan of hers, I was just impressed by that, and obviously was happy to see Doug uh um saying that. And another interesting thing in that video was when Doug was saying he didn't believe ICM was a thing. Uh and for the viewers, just to remember that in tournament play, there's this concept of ICM, independent chip model, versus chip EV, so just pure EV decision making.
Mhm.
And I guess the best way to think of independent chip model is exactly what happens here later on in day two, when you're just a few, like there was a point where we knew there was like we were playing hand to hand. There was lots of people that were sitting on one or two big blinds coming into the big blind, and every like there was like I think three or four away from the money, and every hand to hand that you were playing,
Mhm.
people were being one, at least one or two were being eliminated, and so you literally knew, if I keep folding here, I'm going to automatically
Mhm.
guarantee myself to get my money back, and a little bit more than my money for a
Mhm.
min cash.
Mhm.
And so there's this just incredible pressure just to not play anymore. And you could even fold aces. When we were at the World Series of Poker, when I think you were in a very short stack, but it was your chance to have a first cash that would go up on your Hendon mob. I was like, I think I just, because you were the tail of the side, I just leaned over to you and said, "Hey, buddy, you're folding aces." And sounds ridiculous, but like at the end of the day, what happens there is if you don't fold aces, you call with aces. Yeah, chances are you're going to double or triple up. But if your stack of 3 big blinds now becomes 6 big blinds, your chances of winning the event is slightly better, but still pretty marginal.
Mhm.
Whereas the chances of at least securing that min cash by just folding it out pre-flop is probably almost 99%, unless some miraculous thing happens to a shorter stack than you who's already ready face lice. So that's the independent chip model. And
Mhm.
I mean, I thought about this because you were asking me what is the independent chip model in the context of game theory. And as far as I can tell, the more I thought about it, it's one of these situations where like, and we see this happen like with the big stacks versus the other stacks. Like if you got a very large stack close to the bubble, you can just raise every hand, particularly against medium-sized stacks, because the medium-sized stacks are facing all the pressure. They're basically saying, "Hey, I don't want to get into it with the big stack. I could get eliminated, and I know I can just fold into the money here.
Mhm.
Why don't we wait till the bubble bursts, and then move on?" And of course, at every big pay grade jump, similar to what we were saying, Kristen Foxton was facing in terms of getting to that final table, where every place at the final table is $1 million or more.
Mhm.
Like so you have people that are going to be succumbing to the pressure, and then you have people like Doug, who's a obviously a cash player mostly, who says there's no such thing as ICM, and he's just sticking to chip EV all the time, 100%.
Mhm.
And most tournament players will say that's incorrect. If you're really trying to maximize your value, you have to take in to account ICM. But I think where the game theory comes in is that some people take it into account too much, and some people don't take it into account enough. And you, as a game theorist, would have to sort of, if you were to add that level, is to sort of say, okay, this person's clearly suicidal. They don't even think about independent chip model. I'm
Mhm.
going to have to play them more straight up or whatever. Or this guy is afraid. He's folding aces. Obviously, I'm going to exploit that by raising the hell out of him every time, even with 7 deuce, because if you know your opponent's folding with aces, you can raise with 7 deuce,
Mhm.
and so you're exploiting it. So I mean, I think that's the game theory, and I guess in the end, at this time in the tournament, I don't know, I wasn't folding with aces, but I was probably over folding. So
Mhm.
the exploit against me, game theoretical wise, was for him to raise and or to flat on the big blind and take it down. I mean, he's got pocket fives. I mean, he should have a lot of difficulty realizing his equity with pocket fives, but
Mhm.
neither fit or fold under the gun, or I stopped him, and I should have stopped him if
Mhm.
I was really playing properly, and I didn't. And it
Mhm.
cost you $39,200.
Yeah, yeah, so many, you got a few things happening there, right? This was like the inaugural WSOP in Toronto. All those things, you're like, "Oh, I don't want to play with Negreanu," all these things, and I think,
And I
and,
want to look good to my coworker.
and you want to look at your coworker who got in on a satellite, but and I guess if it was like one of your first chances to cash, you're just trying to do it as well. But I mean, you already had several cash.
We've had cashes. You and I have been to the World Series in Vegas and cash.
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
not a big deal.
yeah,
I've cashed as big as this before,
yeah,
bigger. So
yeah. So at some point, you do have to move more into a Doug frame of mind, or a little more
yeah,
towards the Doug frame of mind. Maybe not like suicidal against
no,
ICM as you were saying, but you know, at some point you do have to say, well, no, let me take a stand here so that I can go further into the tournament. You're gonna have a touch more room. You're down to, you were saying, probably 12, 13 for day two, whereas you would have had 25. I think 25
well,
lines you can still do a little
yeah,
bit three bet folding, right? I think when
you
you're at
can. The
five.
issue would like the night didn't end there. We had another half level. I'm just saying,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
if I had those 25 big blinds and I was playing properly with them, I
Hmm.
think I might have had 30 or 40 big blinds
That's right.
by the
That's
end of the night. And then, by the way, if I had been playing properly and didn't let myself get down to 18 big blinds, similarly, right?
right.
Now, playing a little bit more aggressively like that and forcing the EV chip decision making over ICM, I
Mhm.
could have also been out. So like this is the thing, right? Like I could have been calling you later that night saying, "Hey, buddy, we didn't cash. Sorry, we're out." And you would have
Mhm.
said, "Fine, no problem. We've done that before. You've bought bullets for me that I didn't make it, and similar, I bought bullets for you. You didn't make it, and that's just we know that's part of the process."
Mhm.
But what we also knew is I wasn't playing a cash game. I was in there playing a tournament, hoping to have a chance at the 400,000, you to have a chance at the 40,000,
Mhm.
and I don't think I was playing like that at that moment for some reason. And
Mhm.
I think it was for the wrong reasons. So
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm sorry, cuz.
Yeah. Well, I have 39,000 worth of credit.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
39,000 of buy-ins. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
basically.
almost four main event buy-ins.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So let's end it here. Maybe we'll take a little break. And then when we get back, we'll talk about the Apes and the Bears.
Sounds good.
All right. And we're back. So, poker hand done. We're going to begin our discussions now on the Apes versus the Bears. And I'm gonna take the role in this episode of the interviewer, and you are going to be the content expert, Rich, just because as we've had discussions from the get-go, like you've been deep in the weeds into this whole sort of meme stock phenomena, right? Pretty much from the beginning, I would think. Is that fair to say?
No, I wouldn't say right from the beginning. I I would say after. So the initial squeeze had already happened. So if you're talking about after the
Yeah.
thing that happened in 21, that's when I got involved.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wish
fair
I had begun in the very
enough. Yeah.
beginning.
Then we would really be in a good shit situation. Yeah. No, no, fair enough, fair enough. I hear you. I think I'm going to I don't know if that's sharing. Is that
Yeah, I'm seeing your screen for sure.
yeah. I'm not sure what I'm yeah. So this is my entry point. So similar how we were talking about how I decided to play in that poker tournament and you took a 10% piece of me. You were talking to me about all this GameStop business, and I decided to do an investment as well. This is my just I mean it's not my entry point, but this is where I was. At the time we decided to do a podcast on this, and I was looking at just at my trading account today, and it's not much different. It's maybe it's a little bit. I think I'm down 51% here, but I think I'm down 55%. So
Yeah. So after the return of DFV a
yeah.
few months ago, there was a point where you were back up to even, but
Yes.
it has been
Yeah, no, no, and,
brought
and
back down for whatever reasons, whether
yeah.
you believe in the conspiracy of naked shorting or if that's just what the stock is actually worth.
Well, and you've obviously been talking to me like that entry point is dating back to 2021 some point, obviously in the spring or whatever it was we purchased. But yeah, that this is sort of what was precipitating my idea for this to be the first podcast because it's timely in the news. And I have to admit, there was this point, as you say, just a month or so ago, where I was back to even, maybe even a slight profit, and I was wondering, hey, should I exit here and get my money back? And you were sort of saying, "Hold on, hey, Moas is coming," and well, I think at that point we should probably get started. And so as I said, I'm going to be the interviewer, and from my perspective, I just and I don't know if you have something you'd prefer to share, but I was just going like the first question that we had on the topic is, could you take us through the big stock movements in GME that go obviously back to December 2020, January 2021, and up until like around the time of June 2024 when we were sort of saying, let's talk about this, and the entry point we had gotten back to even almost from where we had entered.
Mhm.
and which, I'm seeing about, um, can you see my
Yep,
X moving
yep.
there?
I'm seeing
Yeah,
it
so
here.
I think at this point I was certainly even. So I don't know, I must have entered in at some point here. And I thought, hey, should we get out of here? And you sort of said, no, let's hold, let's see what happens. And but this obviously exploded in December of 2020, and I didn't know much about it. Like I knew there was a lot going on, and most of the stuff was going pretty crazy. And I should make a note here that this is I think I have the stock split history, like what I'm looking here, this is $83. It looks like $83 is the peak, but let's keep in mind that there was
A 4-to-1 split.
unsplit, right? So this is actually $83 times four. So the top price, we're not talking $83. The top price when this thing was was threatening a short squeeze, or if I mean it was a short squeeze, although I guess that we're going to talk about it potentially being an aborted short squeeze, but the peak price was around $332. That's not reflective on today's stock price chart because it's been split 4-1 on,
Mhm,
I believe, July of 22nd of 2022. That's your understanding as well?
mhm. Yeah, honestly, in the Apes Believe, backed up by the SEC report that actually came out. Um, I don't know if it was a year or so after the initial squeeze, quote unquote. And the reason I say that is because the actual SEC report says it wasn't a short squeeze, and it was more just about retail jumping in. It was more of a movement of FOMO than it was an actual squeeze. So apes have actually apes being the community of these GME stock and these meme stocks. They call themselves apes. They actually turn they call it the sneeze of 21. Some of the apes, a lot of the apes, is generally known as the sneeze. Not sure why they went with sneeze, but they believe, based on this SEC report, that it wasn't actually a short squeeze, mechanically speaking, as far as financial terms, that it was an actual sneeze. So that happened in 21, and you can see on the chart there. Before that, I mean, well, it was trading like under $5, and that would have been the time that DFV was basically uh buying up um calls and shares. I think it was about 50 grand originally. Um he 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 invested in this thing. Did you see the movie, by the way? Dumb Money, the latest?
I didn't. And you know what? I apologize. I should have seen the movie prior to this podcast, but I just things got busy and I wasn't able to, but
No
I
problem.
will take a look at it. Yeah.
So he was buying where that chart is even before 21, where it's down there, right? Way down there below. Sorry, and if it was but it was trading at $3 or $4, right? And so with the split, oh, I don't know how to do the math on that. Anyway, it was a time it was trading at $3 or $4 before it would eventually go up, to that 320 mark.
Yeah, I mean, it's a multiple of 66x. Like 332 divided by 5 is a multiple of 66x. So it's a pretty impressive multiple, obviously. I mean, you can see it in the chart right here. Like it's exponentially skyrocketing.
Yeah.
Now,
So
I
okay.
mean, like the difference to me, like when you see something like this going like that, is this like, people actively trying to buy, like the definition of a short squeeze is the people that are short selling are bidding up the price because they need to cover. And so the question is, what's driving the price up? Is this being driven up by apes trying to buy, or is this being driven up by short sellers trying to cover, or both? I guess it's semantics, really, but I mean, something's like it's a multiple of 66x. Now, should that multiple have been much higher? Should it have been 300x? And should we have seen short sellers blow up? I mean, probably. I guess that's what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you so you were asked, the question was sort of take you through the sort of the highs and lows of this thing
Yeah.
up until, and sorry, and you just said, you kept saying this, the squeeze of 21, and a lot of, just wanted to point out, a lot of people don't believe this was actually a short squeeze, but they call it a sneeze, and that it was in fact retailers piling on, retail investors, everybody piling on after they sold, because like I said, DFE was trading, the end of 20, buying it all up, and then it did this thing where it jumped to 10, and then it jumped to 20. It was making these 100% jumps, and so everybody fucking piled in, right?
Yeah. And sorry, when you say piling on, or you're talking about retail investors, i.e., the apes buying and holding, right? Like the whole diamond hands
That's
phenomenon.
right. That, and I think options, and I like everybody else, right? Who we were all sitting at home, started to begin sitting at home because of COVID.
Yeah, that's true.
What's funny is, around that time, and I remember being at home and thinking, without even knowing about DFE, I was interested in learning about the stock market. Um,
Sorry, Rich, can
you
you
know,
just like for our listeners and even for me, DFE, what does that stand for? And
oh, sorry, that's deep fucking value. Or Keith Gill, as people know him, or Roaring Kitty.
yeah, so I was going to say I thought he was Roaring Kitty. So Roaring Kitty and Keith Gill and DFE are all the same person.
DFV,
D
yeah,
sorry, DFV.
yeah,
DFV
deep
are all the same
fucking,
person. Got it.
yeah.
Got it. Okay.
DFE is deep fucking value. That was his Reddit handle, and
Okay.
so
Okay.
Reddit, and on Wall Street Bets at the time.
Oh, I see. And then
Quite a
and
big
so
one.
Roaring Kitty was
And
his
Roaring Kitty is his YouTube name.
okay. Why
Roaring
does he have two?
Kitty,
Why are they different? Like why doesn't he just have the same name all across all platforms? So
I'm not sure. And also I think his X handle and his Twitter is Roaring Kitty, but for whatever reason he was DFV, deep fucking value. He
yeah,
was That's the full name. His full Reddit username is deep fucking value, and it was just shortened to DFV.
yeah. I got a picture. Or hold on. Let me just get that picture a little bit better to see. Like this is more when we were because this is one of the questions I had. Like again, I look to you for understanding all these things, and of course, like the most recent thing that sort of got this all going was like this picture of him on this was Twitter X. I'm not sure if this was something else, but it was all of a sudden Roaring Kitty, first time he'd posted in years, and just him sitting like, what is this meme supposed to mean? Because this is all driven by meme stock stuff. Like, what like do you how do you interpret this picture even?
Yeah, I mean, so after the initial incident, sneeze, squeeze, whatever you want to call it, in 21, he was um he was still around until he left this epic, and I think this I remember sending it to you, his final update. um and so he was basically posting his positions on Reddit, and not long after, a few months after the initial sneeze, squeeze, whatever you want to call it, in 21, he he went dark, and so he was gone for about 3 years, right up
Yeah.
until the picture you just showed. And so that was the first picture, thing he had tweeted, the first public thing he had done, anything. um
What were some of the speculations as to why he went dark for 3 years? There must have been a lot of rumors there or something.
yeah, I mean, when if you remember, or did you know that he got pulled in front of Congress,
Yeah.
like a bunch of, yeah, the along with all the big players, Robin Hood, Vlad from Robin Hood, and Ken Griffin, another one of the big players in this whole saga, and him as well. And so I think everybody figured he just lawyered up, I mean, he certainly must have lawyered up before he got pulled into Congress. Well, before that, I think he was also sued as well, right?
So
Um,
I mean, fear of the SEC, fear of things. But I was also under the impression that he might have been, it was fear for his life, like there could be people out to try to kill him, or was that just more conspiracy theory stuff?
well, I mean, who knows? I mean, it's big money, and if you believe in the meme stock thesis, it's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of big money involved, right? And so maybe he was. I mean, he went dark, right? Why do people go dark? It could be any one of those reasons. And so that picture is the sort of the return of him. I don't know. Does it represent him coming out of darkness, sort of sitting back, or did he know? A lot of people think he's figured out the swap cycles. So, they believe that first of all, apes and people that believe meme stocks feel that shorts have never ever covered. So they were shorting GameStop, BlackBerry, all these things, just shorting these things, and
AMC,
AMC, and naked shorting them as well.
and
So
also what was the other one? BB
Bed Bath and Beyond,
Bath and Beyond. Yeah, that's another one. Yeah,
yeah, BBY,
yeah.
that those were all being shorted, and so they believe that these shorts have never ever been covered until this day. But basically, what they've done is uh, they've done swaps, so created financial instruments to swap the shorts and be able to just kind of kick the can down the road is the way they put it. And so people believe that DFV has figured out the time cycles of these swaps, and that he came out at that time, that picture where he's been in the dark and now he's sitting up. And so he knew that there would be a run because he came back and it ran, like we were saying. You were back to even there a couple months when he came back.
I don't think
But
there's any question that his picture, just the picture itself, moved the stock. Obviously, like there was a lot of movement
yeah,
on.
I mean, but that's the debate. What I was just about to say, right? Did he move the stock, or did he figure out the swap cycle in which the swaps, you know, had to be, I don't really know the technical term for it, either rolled over, but something about the swap cycle that was going to make the stock run. So based on the time cycles of these swaps, you know, he comes he comes back because he knows it's going to run. So is it because he knew it was going to run, or does he come back and makes it run? So
But wouldn't there have been
that's the
more
question.
than? But wouldn't there have been more than? Like it's been 3 years. There would have been swap cycles. They're
Yeah,
not
maybe.
3 year durations, right? Like, there's got to be in
Yeah, if you
month
bring up
durations, right?
if you bring up the chart,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
chart
no,
back up, you can see there are points at which it see, right, it spikes, it looks like it got hammered down there.
yeah.
And you can sort of see these cycles. Some people believe, maybe there is no cycles or rhyme or reason to it. But I mean, that's the debate. And honestly, one of the other things about this is, and Gary Gensler was even, there's video of him saying this, that retail doesn't move the markets. So, and I understand that that's in contradiction to what I told you about calling it a sneeze instead of a squeeze.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Retail investors can, yeah, I know, like, nobody knows. We're all just you know, nobody knows, right? Exactly what's going on. We're all taking our best guess, trying to come up with our best thesis or
That's right.
theory
That's right.
about what's taking place on this. But I think, and I remember John Stewart even did his stuff on it. Retail trades don't even hit the market. They're all being gone through the dark pools, right? By these, because the market makers are just taking the retail trades, internalizing them. Um, so a lot of people don't believe that it actually moves markets, right? It's institutions, um,
I
institutional
that
that move.
that yeah, I'm not I don't know if I believe I think Gensler or whoever said that might be I don't know why they said that. I think retail does move the market, but I think big players, whales and stuff like that, if however you want to call them, they're the ones that generally speaking move in dark pools because if somebody like a Warren Buffett uh, generally, I mean historically starts making a move, people tend to follow him. So if he's trying to make a trade and all of a sudden people start to see what he's doing and then they start bidding up the price, like it makes it difficult for him to make an investment because like the purchases he makes are so large and take so a while. By the time he can get through and finish his purchase, if he was just to go through regular channels and everybody else sort of sees what he's doing and wants to emulate him, then what ended up being a good buy initially is no longer a good buy because the price got driven up. So that's my understanding of big players using dark pools. But you and I are retail investors. I've never, to my knowledge, done anything through a dark pool. I just sort of just trade on my banking platform. So, but
Yeah,
I
but
don't know how it works.
it wouldn't be you choosing the dark pool, right? It's
No,
the
never.
market makers, so the virtues and the citadels, right? They're basically quote unquote controlling the price. Like that's the belief that
Yeah.
with apes and meme stock investors is that
Well,
that they can't actually control the price, but that at some point the piper will need to be played so that you can with like the it has to be paid that so that with all these cycles and everything else at some point you can't kick it down the can
yeah.
anymore. Just the mathematics of it will say no. It's time to pay the piper, and that's when some sort of moas will occur.
Yeah, so it's a couple things you mentioned now. Maybe that's something we should dig a little deeper into. So you've mentioned Ken Griffin, Griffith or
Griffin, yep,
Ken Griffin,
market
and you've
maker.
mentioned Citadel now. Walk me through that. And we talked about market makers, and in the context of this, Robin Hood, Citadel, Ken Griffin. How do you see this, or how do the apes see this? Because obviously they've got their worldview as to what's going on here, shenanigans wise, with this. Like, what is the role of Citadel and Ken Griffin? Because from the apes' perspective, they're these are some villains in the in the play, right? I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. That's they're the quote unquote bad guys in this whole thing as far as what apes and meme stock investors believe. So with that run up, people piled into this thing, and you can see it went up around 320 and then just got hammered down um back down to 20.
this is
um
when they said the apes aren't allowed to buy, right? Robin Hood stopped perch.
that's right.
You
So
could sell, but you couldn't buy, right?
that's right. So they turned off the sell button
Turn
because
off the buy button.
the buy button.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They turned off the buy button, and so this is where the movement began the ape movement. Well, once that happened, um, people felt they were ripped off and cheated, and so the villains that came out of this would have been Robin Hood, number one, and a lot of the other brokers that turned off that buy button. but they believe that those brokers were working on behalf of market makers like Ken Griffin's Citadel or Virtue as well. So basically, the market makers. And
And
so
then
that's
presumably the regulators, the Gensler and the SEC as well, letting them get away with it.
for not, yeah, for basically letting them get away with it.
So I mean, is it like, is it fair to say sort of like a Gary Gensler and the SEC basically look at this and say, whoa, I mean, Citadel could fall here. And in fact, even Robinhood has liability. We can't let this whole system crash. So we're going to allow some shenanigans to happen. And retail investors, if they're the ones hurt by this, that's fine. But we'd rather them be hurt than the whole system crash. Similar to like financial crisis in 2008 and 2009, outside of Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers, you know, the rest of the Wall Street was supported. Meanwhile, a lot of normal people lost their savings, lost their homes, but bankers were still, for the most part, even the ones that lost their jobs at Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers probably ended up finding a new employment at
yeah,
Goldman Sachs or something. Is that a fair?
yeah, yeah,
Is that a steelman argument for the Bears? Or for sorry for the Apes?
yeah, yeah, for sure. Actually, the IBKR guy, the top guy at IBKR,
Sorry, what's
Petterfly,
that? I don't know that acronym.
sorry, IBK Interactive Brokers. He famously said IBKR. Um, I think his name's Thomas Petterfly. Famously said the system was going to break. The
That's the
system
MOAS.
was going to break. Um, in January of 2021. And I think basically saying what you're saying, yeah, it had to be shut off. And you know, they just they didn't think it was fair. And so what happened was after that, everybody was sitting at home, and then you had these guys sitting at home as well who had just been cheated out of, all their money, who had um really started to dig into how markets actually worked. And this is why we can talk about things like dark pools. And in the beginning, it was like there are no dark pools, there's no naked short selling and all this stuff. And over the course of a couple of years, after being ridiculed as a conspiracy theorist, a lot of the stuff has come out to be true.
Mhm.
So now you've got these apes, angry apes, who are also armed with sort of knowledge of the way things are going. And so they're saying, well, you can't kick the can forever. At some point, you're going to have to pay. Is that true? Can the fuckery just keep continue?
Sorry, and you mentioned the apes are angry. Why are the apes so angry? Like, like you're an ape. I'm trying to be an ape. I'm an aspiring ape. But like, why should we be angry? Like, why are the apes angry? Because I definitely get that sense of sort of palpable anger, righteousness about them. What's the?
Well, they're angry because, it's supposed to be a free and fair market, but it appears that it's not, based on everything looked at, that's been sort of proven that these things exist, naked shorting, and they're angry that fuck you, pay me, is sort of this sort of attitude. You lost.
Mhm.
You guys lost. You so-called smart money made a terrible bet. We figured it out. you know and then a lot of apes don't even think it was a bet that these guys are making. It was just a scam they've been running this whole time. That they think they've figured out that these markets aren't actually free and fair. And so they've bought these stocks and they've rode them down to losing 50% of their investment or more. And some of them, they rode right into bankruptcy. If you think about BBBY, Bed Bath and Beyond. And so they're angry that they figured out what was going on, and so they took the other side of the quote unquote bet and said no, you
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
and so they've held it, and they believe, with the knowledge that they believe they've gathered on what's taking place in markets, that I'm just going to hold this, and
Yeah.
at some point you're gonna have to pay. And so, there's gonna be a lot of different types. I mean, you and I, it's not like we remortgaged our
No.
houses, but there are some, who are down probably tens of thousands. It's probably some out there down millions right now. But they're
Or their life savings, like they had everything they had in their account, and there's this sort of like the people posting on the thing, hey, look at my account, it's at zero or something like that.
lost porn.
Loss porn, yeah, they're proud of the loss, and that's where the sort of the righteous pride of the loss is what I mean by the anger, I guess. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's why I mean so.
because we're always going back. If I could relate it back to poker, it feels to me it's sort of like I you and I went and played in, let's say, some kind of home game, and the guy who runs the game was sitting at the table and he had a big stack, and we were playing, and we were we hit the 1 in a million. We hit our straight flush draw, and we went all in, and we were supposed to win. And then the dealer who works for him came by and said, "Yeah, well, actually, that was the wrong card. I forgot to burn the card, even though we saw them burn." And they take it back and they deal a different card, and then he gets off. But they have to do that because if we win and take all the money, then the whole home game is going to go down, because the guy running the game, who's actually paying for the dealer and paying for the food, and maybe there's some other things happen, even paying the rent for the place. If we win all that money, then the whole thing goes down. So we're not allowed to win. Is that a fair?
Yeah, yeah. That's exactly the way it feels. And I mean, the philosophy for a lot of them is like, well, if me just like buying and holding a stock is going to break the market, you know, was that market really operating properly in the first place? And isn't that what all these guys do? Isn't that what Buffett says? Don't time the market, spend, don't, time in the market better than trying to time the market. And so it's very odd. It's like, well, what, I'm holding this thing and it's going to break the market. Well, I'm pretty sure there was something wrong with the market when I thought that's what you were supposed to do.
Well, I mean, I think Buffett. I mean, I'm a value investor primarily, and I did follow Buffett. I mean, the perspective of a Warren Buffett value investor is that you use the market forces to your advantage in the context that you're investing based on true valuations of the company. Like, you're sort of saying this company is undervalued or overvalued based on its earnings, its price to book value, any metrics that actually look at the company itself. You're not analyzing the stock profile like we're seeing here. I'm going to take this down, but just so I can, because I don't think we're looking at it. But you're sort of saying, hey, this is a financial company that's doing great. It's got great earnings, great potential, a lot of money on the balance sheet. There's no little debt, all these kind of metrics of the company itself. And then you look at what it's trading for, price to earnings and stuff like that. And the thing I think the meme stock phenomena sort of brought out, as did to some extent the financial crisis, and also when we had, I think Michael Lewis wrote a book about like some of the flash traders and stuff, is this question of, is the market really reflecting what's happening in the real world with respects to these companies? And this is where I'm going to push back on you a little bit about the whole GME thing, in so much as like, uh, if the market is value, if the valuation is based on the stock price on the market, is if it's not based on what a Warren Buffett or a value investor would do, then there's this concept, and there's a guy by the name of, I used to listen to his podcast called Hidden Forces, Dimitri Kofinas. He coined the term, I believe, of financial nihilism, where basically, valuations and understanding stock price in the context of uh, of of the actual company metrics is no longer a thing, and now we're just going to, the stock price is going to be based on memes and what's going on social media, and then shenanigans that are happening in the background and being allowed to happen by regulators, and really it's just all a casino now, and maybe even a rigged casino, which is very disturbing because the stock market historically has not been that. The stock market was supposed to be an opportunity for people to invest in the real world economy. And if it is a financial nihilism circumstance, then, I mean, that's a problem. But like, if I could take that argument, the financial nihilism argument, and sort of point it back at, let's say I'm going to point it back at the apes themselves. The apes are believing that GME is a GameStop is a potentially a great investment, and whereas from a financial valuation value investing perspective, somebody might look at that and say, "Why? Wait a minute here. It's a brick and mortar company that sells video games. Why is that not going to go out of business just like Blockbuster did? Like isn't Steam and all those online platforms where my kids who play video games are buying their stuff now? They're not going to GameStop and buying it in a brick and mortar. They're buying it online. Why, just the way Netflix killed Blockbuster, why isn't it fair? Because this was the original thesis, presumably, that the short sellers took when they were overly aggressively shorting GameStop to zero, let's say. They exposed themselves, no question. But at the end of the day, isn't it correct to say that, hey, GameStop's a loser? It should go to zero. But like, you're, as an ape, you probably say no to that, and maybe that's where we can talk about Ryan Cohen and where he comes into this.
Yeah, I mean, I think since the internet was invented, people have said brick and mortar, all brick and mortar is dead, brick and mortar is dead. And I think that certainly saying brick and mortar is dead came to fruition during COVID. I mean, yeah, a lot of brick and mortar died. But I mean, I'm a Gen Xer, and I won't buy clothes online or anything like that because you want to try it. But that's a little different because you're saying, with Steam and stuff like that, you're digitally buying something, so it's not something you have to look at or touch and feel with that. And so I think that it's that thesis would have been right, that brick and mortar, a GameStop like that was probably going to die, or would die soon, and certainly during what was taking place with COVID and stuff like that. But you hit it right. And that's the introduction of Ryan Cohen. And Ryan Cohen was a big reason. I think it would have been, yeah, it would have. I mean, I don't know the complete and full history of DFV before, but I do remember seeing video even recently. Actually, yeah, when he streamed just a few weeks back there, it was Ryan Cohen. So that Ryan Cohen was going to do something with GameStop, which originally seemed like, because he came in around the same time NFTs were coming up and the GameStop marketplace, NFT came around, and people thought that they were shifting from we're going to do the shift from brick and mortar to um, online. So
This is the new business model for GameStop. That
yeah, that they were transforming, basically, that Ryan Cohen was going to take this thing and transform it from this dying brick and mortar and sort of moving on to into the whole NFT and NFT games and stuff like that. I think a lot of that is still happening and developing. Not with actual GameStop anymore. I don't even know if you know this. You know the GameStop NFT marketplace is gone, right?
no, I didn't know
You know,
that.
yeah, it's
Oh,
gone. It's
why?
gone. They shut
Why?
it down a few months back.
Hmm.
I'm not sure why. Did we ever find out why? I don't. Maybe it wasn't profitable. I mean, it's always about money.
Well, and
Um,
the interest in NFTs, I mean, NFTs obviously had gone up like a rocket, and they had come down. This is totally separate from meme
yeah,
stocks and game like that. That's this crypto thing, really.
it's a
Yeah,
crypto winter, as they
it's a
call
crypto winter. I mean,
it.
it was NFTs that were driving a big part of the crypto upswing, particularly for Ethereum, as you know, and you and I are both Ethereum investors, so
Yeah,
we'll,
future
we'll,
episode.
well, yeah, future episode, and we will sort of admit our conflict of interest, I guess, in that perspective. I don't own any Bitcoin, and I know you don't own significant, but we do own Ethereum. But yeah, that was driving the surge. But we did go into a crypto winter, although we seem to have been coming out of that a little bit. But NFTs drove that last rise, that last sort of bull market in crypto, particularly for Ethereum. But it'll be interesting to they've definitely, like, there were a lot of people that similarly were buying like NFT pictures of JPEGs of apes and paying, I don't know, 50,000. I have no idea. I never bought any of that stuff, but I
Yeah,
was happy to see that something was there
it's-
was a use case for Ethereum outside of speculations on the coin. And that is what's going to necessarily drive obviously all crypto, is that they got to the developers have to create use cases, more than just speculative use cases for Ponzi scheme trading. But I think certainly Bitcoin and almost certainly even more so Ethereum has that. But let's park that for another time. But that is interesting. I did not know the NFT on GameStop marketplace had collapsed. But
yeah.
this
So there was a whole thing about being able to trade NFT in game stuff, or even the games themselves would be owned as NFTs.
yeah
Because I don't know if you know about this, right? Like, so when you buy a game on some of these platforms like Steam and stuff, um, you're not actually buying it, right? You're buying the license to use that, but that and there's a couple things. I'm not really a huge gamer where the games have just gone. Like, you can't play them anymore. But you've paid your $80 or whatever, $100 for this game, but you weren't paying for the game. You were paying for the license to use that game while it existed. Like, I think it's like the game just disappeared or whatever. And it's like, well, I paid $100 for this thing, and now I can't play the game anymore.
I guess you were
So,
renting, not owning.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. You paid for the license, which actually is kind of the same thing with stocks. I don't know if we want to talk about Seed and Co. That you don't actually own your stocks, and that's why there was this whole direct registration movement and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
That
It's
that you
very
only
disconcerting when you told me that. Very disconcerting. Yeah, totally.
you only own that stock, the rights to that stock, and you don't actually own it. Say, like in the old days, you'd actually get a stock certificate. So now you own a stock only as much that it's sitting in your name on a ledger somewhere. and that
Yeah.
you don't actually own that.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, honestly, Rich, I see it as even worse than how you're describing. I see it as counterparty risk, meaning like if I own stocks in my trading account at my bank, I'm under the impression that I own those stocks. And what I think people don't real and similarly, I'm also under the impression that the money in my bank is my money. But what people don't realize is that no, it's the bank. The bank has my money and the bank has my stocks. And if something happened and the bank went bankrupt, I don't have it. Like there's a counterparty risk there. And all of a sudden I'd go to the bank and try to get my money. You have a run in bank and they might not be able to give you my money. And yes, there's a CDIC of 100 grand or whatever to in Canada to give me that back. But I don't know how long that would take to get that money and would I get it right away or what have you. Further to that, I was under the impression in my trading account that all those stocks though are owned by me, but I don't think that's the case. I think that if there was a liquidation of a financial institution in Canada that was holding my thing, that those would be lost. Creditors that were coming after that institution would be coming after all their assets, including assets that I thought were my assets. And so all these people who lost their money when FTX went under, all these people who lost their money when Binance went under, we could be in the same situation. And so this is where counterparty risk really manifests. And so the true people who really own crypto and sort of say, hey, listen, not your keys, not your not your money, because only if you have total sort of custody, like in the context of you actually have a cold storage wallet, can you actually say, no, I truly own, like it's not, I don't need permission to get my money. I'm holding my money. Similar to if I had cash hidden in a
Red
safe
stuff.
somewhere and dug in the backyard. Now, obviously, there's all that. By the way, for anybody, I don't have any cash in the backyard. And just so I can say, if I do have crypto, I literally do actually have counterparty risk in so much as all of my key phrases and even my USB keys, I usually actually store them in at the bank in safety deposit boxes there, which by the way are not covered by CDIC. So if an institution went down, you're screwed. But like I just don't want to carry the risk of having this stuff in the home and some home invasion comes after me because like it's just
Under
everything's
your
under
mattress? You
control.
don't have it stuffed in your mattress?
I do not have it stuffed in my mattress. Yeah, absolutely not. So
So yeah,
listen,
go ahead.
let's just take a break because I think there's a lot more we want to talk about and get into. But I'm going to take a break right here just to cut the feed and we'll move into our second recording and also just give us a bit of a break before we can move on to this sort of the second part of this.
Sounds good.
All right, welcome back, Rich. So we're finishing up now in terms of our discussions on the Apes versus the Bears on Wall Street. Um, so we've had some good discussions so far. We talked a little bit about this perspective of financial nihilism. I mentioned briefly in that, why is a company like GameStop that supposedly sells video games at a brick and mortar shop, if that model is broken and hardly anyone is like, if you're not selling enough games that way to make a money to justify the employees and the renting of all these positions, and I think that's fair. Like it's a net negative. Like they're not making enough money, so they're losing money for every brick and mortar.
They were losing
Yeah,
money. That was
yeah,
the bear thesis.
yeah. Let's assume that they're losing money, and then obviously the question is then why is if you have a company that's losing money, even if they're able to temporarily generate income by a sudden surge in their stock price, to which they benefit because they're issuing stock when that happens, and obviously I get it, they've wiped out debt, their balance sheet looks great, but at the end of the day,
They are, and they are actually profitable. They've had their first profitable year. I mean, it's not much, but it is technically profitable now.
Right. And it might be, you can always make something cash flow positive if you don't have any debt. So you don't have, you don't have any debt,
They do not, Ryan.
finance.
They do not have any debt.
Yeah, obviously they have wiped out debt.
Mhm.
But like at the end of the day, for a business, you need a business model that is actually generating cash. It's like imagine if you say to me, I've got a holding company and it's got a lot of cash in there, like billions. That
Which it
you might,
does.
which it does. I mean, I'm totally,
Mhm.
totally getting there. I'm totally sort of accepting that. But like that to me, you might sort of say, hey, well, this is great. Why don't we invest in that? And interestingly enough, I mean, the reasons is because even if you did, that shouldn't be perceived as valuable because in essence, there's no ability for that cash to grow. Like that cash is just stuck at that amount. And it's still the company still has to come up with the idea or the concept or the business plan that will generate further income from there. Now, they have the strength and advantage that they don't have to borrow money for that, but their model can't be simply, oh well, every time the stock price goes up, we'll just issue more stock. That's not a that's just as much financial nihilism. Like, but how intrinsically is the company actually making money? Whereas, like, let's say GameStop sort of said, okay, we don't have much cash, or we have cash, but we're actually we also have loans in that we have a mortgage, but we have this NFT marketplace, and we also have this other thing going on, and three other business models, all of which are starting to generate income, and that income is growing. Then that is something that people want to invest in. In fact, a company could be not even making money yet, but their revenues are growing, the business model looks good. People sort of look at the products and say, hey, this is great stuff and everybody wants this. And they've just got to increase the scale so that they can get it out at a profitable perspective.
Sure.
Generally, like when you think about stocks, that people would look at it like, oh, is this a growth stock? Or is this a value stock? And generally, the multiples that you're willing to pay for a growth stock is much higher because people know that I'll pay for a much higher price to earnings multiple because the earnings are going to grow. I mean, it's going to grow into the stock price and then even grow beyond it. So somebody like Apple or Google historically is going to have a much higher price to earnings multiple than would like a bank or like a manufacturing steel company or something like that. Those are going to have very low multiples. Those would be considered value stocks. And in a holding company is not even a thing, right? Like when you think about it, like when you think of, I mean, you mentioned obviously Ryan Cohen, but he also has an association with Carl Icahn, right? So Carl Icahn is a corporate raider. Remember from the 80s, like going back, like the whole concept of a corporate raider will come in, he'll find a company, let's say an Estee Lauder or something like that, that's like gotten a little bit bloated. Meaning, yes, they make money, but they haven't really been doing much with that money. They haven't been investing it into R&D to develop new products. They're just basically letting the cash grow on the balance sheet. Well, a corporate raider will see that and they'll do what they call a leveraged buyout. They will borrow money to purchase the stock and then eventually basically buy out the entire company, either get a controlling share or even take the whole thing private. And they could do so with debt. And then they'll take the cash that's on the balance sheet of the company to pay off the debt, plus the future revenues and cash flows. And then you sort of they're basically buying the company with the company's own cash. So if GME can't just sort of say, well, I'm a holding company full of cash, corporators actually usually strip companies of those cash. So that's the sort of question I'm putting to you, like putting to us, like we're the apes and we think, hey, Ryan Cohen's going to turn this thing into a money generating thing, but right now it's just a holding company. Why is that something to invest in? Because generally a holding company isn't something to invest in. Usually there has to be a money generating business that's much more important than the cash they have. But What's your
Well,
thought?
the apes believe that they're not just going to take this, do these stock buybacks, get cash, and then just sit on that cash. Obviously not. And so the idea is that there's going to be mergers and acquisitions, which would take us into the field. There's a section of apes, not all of them, that believe they will do mergers, reverse mergers. The big one is with what's left of BBBY, Bed Bath and Beyond, which is in Chapter 11 bankruptcy, not Chapter 7, and that there's going to be some sort of reemergence of of what was BBBY, and it's going to be acquired or merged. The same time that they became this holding company, Jamie, they also gave um, and have stated multiple times in their 10Ks about uh, being able to do mergers and acquisitions, and they have given basically Ryan Cohen the authority to merge and acquire other companies, and so that seems to be the plan. So they're not just going to sit on this cash. They it does seem they intend to put it to work with these multiple references in their 10Ks and filings and stuff about mergers and acquisitions. So
You mentioned, I'm not, I have to admit, I don't know what's the difference between Chapter 7 and Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
so
Seems like,
chapter 11, I mean, I'm not an expert, but a chapter 7 is like a straight liquidation. So gather everything up, pay off whatever creditors there are, and that's the end of it. Chapter 11 is restructuring. I'm sure you know that. It's
I've heard of Chapter 11. I've certainly heard of restructuring. Yeah.
yeah, so that's an opportunity to restructure, maybe get investors of some sort, maybe like a GME,
So
Carl
Chapter
Icahn.
7, there would be no company left. You basically
Yeah.
strip it down to nothing and then pay out whatever cash you get to the creditors. Whereas
Again, that's
Chapter 11, there will be a company still at the end of it.
yeah, I think a company can go into chapter 11, but if they can't restructure, get financing, if it's just not in the books, I think it can move into a chapter 7. It can then become a chapter 7. But apes believe, a section of apes, not all of them, believe that BBBY, some form of it, will reemerge or be acquired by GME and reverse merged. Basically, um, Cohen did this sort of the same thing he did with GameStop. When he got onto the GameStop board, he got a certain percentage of shares, and then put people on the GameStop board, and then wrote a letter to the board. And so a couple years back, after he became an investor at BBBY, the same thing, he wrote a letter to the board talking about the value of Bye Bye Baby. And so the apes that believe in the Bed Bath and Beyond play believe that Bye Bye Baby is sort of around the center of this because it was profitable. It was like a $5 billion company. Its valuation was somewhere in the $5 billion range, and so they think that so Bye Bye Baby, and then um
And sorry, what was profitable, Rich? That was the Bed
the
Bath and
Bye
Beyond
Bye
retail.
Baby wing of Bed Bath and Beyond. So
Okay.
Bye Bye Baby was underneath as part of Bed Bath and Beyond.
And what was
Oh,
that? Like they sold baby products or something?
baby products, yeah, yeah. So and so the existence so that the letter to the board about that, and then um what's called the net operating losses, NOLs they call them. There's like I think 3 or 4 billion in net operating losses that can be used um for tax purposes in the future of anything that's reemerged, or if it was acquired by somebody. so it could be used in future tax stuff. I mean, and again, I'm not an expert. So all this to say that um, as a holding company, it's not just going to sit on the cash, but they believe that there's going to be mergers and that GME will begin to acquire things, and that it may also merge into something, another company that Ryan Cohen created called Teddy, and that Teddy, GME, BBBY, these are all going to be one thing that would eventually challenge Amazon.
Right.
So that's the bull thesis with GME as a holding company, that there would be some kind of mergers, acquisitions, reverse mergers, all that stuff. I'm not an expert, but that's what I know as far as what apes believe and have researched.
Right. And so if I'm to try to steel man that argument of the apes, is it fair to say that whether it's Bed Bath and Beyond, GME, and some of these other models, we're leveraging the really strong balance sheets, some of the historical retail sort of enterprise, and maybe the goodwill, branding, customer base, and stuff you've had, and we're trying to reimagine, remodel, restructure into some form of retail giant that could compete with Amazon. And we know that, like, we're presuming Amazon's obviously a great business model. I mean, Jeff Bezos is arguably the first or second, depending on their stock prices, richest guy
Yeah,
in the world. And so that's the thought is we're going to basically evolve into a competitor for Amazon.
that's right. So the whole brick and mortar thing, though they become profitable, well, the gaming side of it, that's what they call, quote unquote, I guess, the legacy business. Just as you know, one of the other big ones, I guess it's Buffett, right? It was a tile, right? Tile
Berkshire,
fabric.
sorry,
Yeah, Berkshire was.
Berkshire Hathaway. I mean, originally when he bought it, it was a losing. I think it was. I'm not sure if it was tile. I think it
Textile.
was clothing,
Textile.
textile. It was
Yeah,
textile. Yeah,
textile. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So that's the belief that, and there's a quote out there. One of the Ryan Cohen tweets was uh Ryan Cohen by day, Warren Icon by night, or something like that, some mashing. And so again, that's moving sort of more into the tinfoil side of things. But
Well, I just want to sort of clarify, right? Like, so Warren Buffett purchased Berkshire Hathaway as like yet another sort of, this is even before he took his full perspective of his value investing approach, but it was a classic value investing approach where it was probably a money losing company. It was selling at price cheap, dirt cheap prices on the market, was able to take it and buy it. But it wasn't that they turned Berkshire Hathaway around. Berkshire Hathaway just became the corporate vehicle for Warren to run his holding company. And like the business model for Berkshire Hathaway is Warren Buffett. Like his approach to investing has been, historically a 20% average. It's up and down versus years, but it's because he's got this value investing approach, and he's what you're investing. When you invest in historically, when you're investing in Berkshire Hathaway, you're investing in his ability to invest in the stock market. He just happens to use the old company of the textile corporation, which is now just a
it's
holding company and now owns things like Dairy Queen and
sure.
trains and all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
And that, but that's what the apes
Yeah.
are doing, right? When you say when you're investing in that, you're investing in, people believe they're investing, when they're investing
No,
at
no,
the,
no, absolutely. Absolutely. What I'm trying to say though is that whether you were investing in Warren Buffett before he owned Berkshire Hathaway, let's say you were a co-investor with him, or then eventually you started saying, "Oh, he didn't like when Buffett was investing as a private investor, let's say, you would have to sort of give him your money and then he would invest and he'd give, you don't have to do that anymore. If if you want to invest my money, just buy Berkshire Hathaway shares on it's almost like before there was ETFs, that was the way to invest in Warren Buffett, was to buy the thing. But the business model was his investing prowess. That was the thing. So I guess what I'm just trying to say is when I see, can GameStop outcompete Steam and other online products for selling video games? Can BBY and the baby stuff compete against other models? Can all of them compete against Amazon? Which, I mean, I get what they're saying. They're saying Amazon's making a lot of money. I I'm not aware that people have been able to successfully, like, I don't like
Well,
the premise.
again,
That's my competition. I'm a little worried about that actually.
again,
Mhm.
and I might have mentioned this to you before. This is another reason why people are investing in Ryan Cohen, because he had a little startup that he tried to start off
This is
a
the pet.
while
Is this
ago.
the pet food
This
thing?
is the pet one,
Yeah.
and got turned down by a lot of people. One of the other people that's with him, who was also on the GameStop board, a guy named Larry Chang, did invest with him, and they all said, "Ah, you're gonna compete with Amazon. You're gonna compete with Amazon. It ain't gonna happen." And so he started this Chewy business, and he did sort of, his focus became sort of on this delighting the customer, it's called. And so, when I started to learn about this whole Chewy business, right, like you would you get birthday cards for your dog from Chewy and stuff like that. I don't think Amazon is doing that. Maybe they are, or maybe they were, or maybe they do now. I don't know. Probably not, because was specific. It was Chewy. It was a pet supply company, and they certainly did and take on Amazon, take market share away from Amazon, and he sold that company, and I guess that's how he became a billionaire, for 4 or 5 billion. He sold Chewy to sorry, it's one of the other big pet companies. Like, it makes sense when sorry, I should have researched it, who he sold Chewy to. I could um anyway
Yeah,
look
you
it
can
up.
look it up.
So he did end up yeah, taking a bite out of Amazon and sold this thing for 5 billion. I can't remember who the big pet company was. And so when after he did that, and this young Canadian, by the way, Ryan Cohen, did you know that?
Oh, I didn't know he was Canadian. No.
Yeah, he's a Canadian guy.
Wow.
He did this. So when after he did this, and so when people say, "Why, but he's not going to be able to take on Amazon," they believe he might actually be able to, because only because he's done it before. You
Mhm.
know, um, but it was a small niche pet food thing. Can he build a whole infrastructure? That's going to be able to take on what Amazon does. Well, it seems like the company's got 4 or 5 billion to start, and then you see, I've sent you the picture of him standing with Icon. Is
Yeah.
Icon in on this? Icon, by the way, has been smashed. I don't know if you've been watching what's happened to his stock.
No.
Shorted. There was, like, you don't know about this Hindenburg
No, I don't know.
play. Yeah, if you look up the um Icon's stock, IEP, it's down like 50%, which is billions, and Icon owns, as you know, most of the stock in IEP. So apes are like, I think he's partnered with Icon, and that they are building some huge thing that's gonna, take on Amazon and stuff. And I think, and apes believe that's why you know, other big money has smashed his and shorted IEP stock down.
Yeah.
So that's the back to your question is
That's the business model.
what I do with a yeah with a holding company. What are they doing with this cash? Are they just going to do sell buybacks when Roaring Kitty shows up, just sell stock and take our money? Some of the apes are mad, right? Because they did these buybacks. The stock was running and they sold
So you keep saying buybacks, but you mean they're issuing
stock
stock. It's
sales.
like
Yeah,
it's the opposite. Like buyback is when a company
sorry,
buys its own stock back. They're issuing stock. Yeah.
issue, not buyback. Sorry,
Yeah.
I was confusing that. So
Yeah.
that is the
And sorry, apes were mad that they issued stock because I guess it dilutes
some
the.
of them,
Yeah.
some of them, but
Yeah.
some of them believe in it. Say, listen, like, go ahead, man. Yeah, like, go ahead. I mean, there's all different people, and you see them on the social media if you're following any of the community. Some are mad. Some are mad that why did Moas was starting? Why did you dilute the stock? And some are like, relax. They're building a big war chest. Him and Icon are about to build this giant company, and they're going to take on Amazon, and and and
It's
they're
kind
going
of a
to.
competing thing, eh? Like it's like, oh, I'm an ape. I want to see MOAS happen. I want to see the short sellers get their comeuppance and through MOAS and I don't like the fact that the company is issuing stock that maybe, for all we know, some of these short sellers are then purchasing the stock that's issued and covering their positions for all we know. I mean, I will say, like, getting back out of financial nihilism and into financial perspectives, like when if you're a shareholder in a company and the stock price surges and the company says, well, I think the valuations are a bit crazy and we're not actually worth that much,
Mhm.
you should be happy that your management team recognizes that and actually issues stock there. In fact, more often than not, the complaints shareholders get complained that CEOs of companies have buyback programs where they're constantly buying back shares, even though the shares are expensive. Because that's actually like if I have a CEO of a company that I own and they're buying back the shares of the company to sort of undilute the stock, even though I'm benefiting from that in terms of my shares becoming more valuable because they're less diluted and technically speaking, then the dividends per share and everything should go up. That's not a good thing for me if they're doing so when the stock price is actually high. Like I don't have a problem if they're buying it. If all of a sudden the stock price crashes and the CEO says, "Hey, we're worth way more than this, and we have cash on the balance sheet. We're going to buy back our own shares and undilute them because we can get them at a deal." That's a smart move. But if you have a CEO that's buying back shares that are expensive, that usually is a sign of a bad CEO because the CEO could be doing a CEO is supposed to be doing the most productive thing possible with money on the balance sheet. That might be buying back shares, but it shouldn't really be buying back shares. It should be doing R&D and development and trying to create new products and create new business ventures, like what you're saying,
Yeah,
Ryan Cook
no,
is
no.
going to do.
Listen, and it's funny because you're talking about that, and it's exactly. I don't know if you meant to do this, but what happened with Bed Bath and Beyond? They were doing buybacks, and this whole process that's happening now with Chapter 11. Um, they are investigating the share buybacks that Mark Triton, who was the CEO of Bed Bath and Beyond at the time, was. And Apes believe that there's also going to be um, a recovery of some sort after this investigation into these share buybacks. And that Mark Triton, the allegation is that Triton and the board at the time, this would have been before Cohen showed up and had got some people on the board, um, that they were doing that, and that Mark Triton and the board were doing share buybacks, and we're basically running BBBY into the ground, and then still taking their bonuses and everything else. And that this was a big reason that BBBY actually went bankrupt because of these
Yeah,
share buybacks.
very interesting. That's
Yeah, that's it's funny because I like you and I talk, but we haven't really talked. I mean, you don't know as much because you don't have BBBY.
I never invested in
Yes,
full
yeah,
disclosure. I didn't follow you into BBY like I did follow you into GME. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
you did BBBY.
Oh, yeah, very briefly, very
Yeah,
briefly.
yeah, you
Yeah,
slung
yeah,
traded. Well,
yeah.
we tried, and then we went down, and then you got even, and we both got out. We both at that time.
Yeah. I made money on it. I made money on that trade for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I followed it down, and basically, and like any of the other apes that followed it, it was because Ryan Cohen had, like I said, sent a letter to the board, said, bed bye bye baby should be carved out, um, and so as it went down, people believed some of the apes who knew Cohen from Chewy, GME, and everything else that's going on there said, no, there's something going on here with BBBY, and I think Ryan Cohen's gonna resurrect this. He knows, like there's a lot of tweets that have been sent out, right? Like Cohen had tweeted a lot about these executives that were doing these things. That America, one of the tweets is America is littered with executives that play with shareholders' money and face no consequences or whatever, and that he said,
Yeah, no, I don't argue that, right? Yeah.
yeah, and then there's a tweet that said, I believe if these executives run companies into the ground, they should have to pay that money back. Like, like he's sending out these tweets. And so, apes that have already been following Ryan, I love this, see what's happening, the things he's saying, and then, he sends a letter to BBI board and all this stuff. And so they go, oh, well, I think Cohen's in here. He's gonna come in here and do stuff.
Okay. So is it fair to say that the apes believe in Ryan Cohen? Like the apes
Yeah,
are
what I was saying earlier,
yeah,
that
so
they're not
fair enough.
investing
And
in me, they're investing in.
okay, no, fair enough. And then is Keith Gill, Roaring Kitty, as we've called him, is he the quintessential ape or he's one of the leading apes then?
Yeah, I mean, he started the whole
Yeah,
movement, and
right.
as recently as when he live streamed, uh, just when he came back a week or two after he came back there, he again once again reiterated, as he had done when in the early days, um, that Ryan Cohen's here, and that
So this
it's a
has to
play.
be
And Ryan
asked.
Cohen, I think, as a direct quote, is it's a play on Ryan Cohen, or
Right, but so this has to be asked then, Rich, because like how do we know that like Keith Gill and Ryan Cohen aren't together in on so much as some kind of pump and dump scheme? And again, I'm just putting it out here, but maybe you can
oh, you're
call this
just asking, how
conspiracy.
do we know?
Yeah,
No,
if these
yeah.
guys are together, like if Keith Gill is coming in and sort of, posting his memes, that's driving the stock price up. That's allowing Ryan Cohen to issue stock. Like maybe that sub segment of the bears that are sort of saying, "Hey, what's going on here? Like, is Keith Gill pump?
Yeah,
Is this
I
a
mean,
pump and dump scheme? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, how do we not know? But we certainly have to be cautious and think about that. But you think about it, right? Like, does Ryan Cohen, the guy's worth $4 or $5 billion. Roaring Kitty now is apparently worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He was certainly worth 30 mil at the time he did his infamous final post.
Well, he was heading to
Is it,
become a billionaire if GME had still kept going up. It turned
he,
around, obviously,
he
but
certainly was. But you're saying, well, maybe he was pumped. Not you're saying, but the question has to be asked: is he pumping and dumping with Cohen? Are they together or whatever? But what is the purpose of that? Like, if I'm already worth 4 or 5 billion, and I guess the answer is, why would I do that? And it would be greed, either or of them. But based on um the things Cohen says and does about greedy executives and stuff like that, based on his actions, right? It doesn't seem like it would just be a pump and dump. So your
well, I
question.
mean, no, I mean, like, listen, his tweets and his
And,
messages.
and also, sorry, one last thing is, why would he risk um alienating this mad fan base, right? Why would he really get in some like illegal pump and dump with Roaring Kitty when, you know what I mean? Like, you just be like, well, what the fuck, man? I'm out. You just sell your GME shares, right? Like, if
Yeah,
you found out that he was doing it, so why would he risk it?
well, yeah.
That would be the argument, the answer to that question. You
Well, I
can't
mean,
use the names.
no, I hear you. I'm just sort of saying, like, and again, I'm not saying it's when I say pump and dump, I don't mean something as cynical as that. I'm thinking more along the lines of Keith Gill creates a meme that creates the movement, or sort of, let's say, rekindles the movement as happened in June. And that creates a surge in the stock price, which, obviously, and again, it's not a bad move, but like it's a smart management move to say, hey, let's issue stock and create more cash on our balance sheet. But at the end of the day, some apes you've already alluded to see that as, hey, what this is counter to MOAS. This is dilutive, has a dilutive property. I don't like this. And at the end of the day, I was seeing my stock prices surge. We were seeing our stock as apes. We were seeing our stock prices go up. We were all of a sudden in the positive, whereas we'd been in the negative for years. And then all of that quickly reversed again. And then all I know is that Keith Gill made that meme.
Almost became a billionaire.
Well, yeah, but Keith Gill made that meme. It moved the stock, and a lot of cash went into the balance sheet of GME. And I'm a shareholder of GME, so that's on the balance sheet of the stock that I own. I get that, but at the end of the day, I don't control that. That Ryan Cohen controls that, and in the end, I think even if we consider their motives clean in so much as that they're sort of saying, well, this is what we need to do in order to create the company that's going to be the one that competes against Amazon and is going to be like, this new giant. And Ryan Cohen might be like, okay, I would like to be the next Jeff Bezos. I'd like even, you could even have a noble motive. You could sort of say, hey, it's not right that Amazon gets to be a monopoly here. Consumers need a credible second retailer to compete against them. That's gonna protect consumers. And I want to create that. And if I become the third or second or even first richest man doing it, hey, well, that's what capitalism's for, and we all should be for that. So it could all be for those reasons, right? Which are all like it's not a Ponzi scheme, let's say. But nonetheless, it is still Keith Gill doing his meme thing, providing this opportunity, GME, i.e., Ryan Cohen in charge of GME, taking advantage of it. And at the end of the day, us as shareholders basically, providing the liquidity, the cash for them to do all that. But we're not personally further ahead. Like you and I aren't heading towards where we thought we would be. Like if you own a stock and it surges to a true, let's say a true squeeze, like not the sneeze, but an actual squeeze, your holding could become exponentially high and you could gain a huge personal benefit, which we're not seeing. And is there a threat? I mean, obviously, if this eventually people get frustrated enough, there will be this will all stop and certain apes will become disillusioned and so on and so forth. But right now,
I'm sure there's been people,
yeah,
who have sold their GME at a loss and said,
but
this thing
but
isn't
there
going.
is still a large community you have to imagine of apes that are still having the diamond hands, and what that effectively does is it creates like a free put option for the stock in the same way that we talk about the Fed put backstopping the stock market for the last, I don't know, 20 years. I mean, Alan Greenspan before and Bernanke after, and whoever's in charge of the Fed seems to constantly say, hey, if the stock market crashes too much, don't worry, we're going to bring in quantitative easing. You don't have to purchase a put option. The Fed's putting the put option for you. That's what the apes are doing for Ryan Cohen and GME and BBY. And as long as you believe and you have faith in the Ryan Cohen model, then that makes sense. But if at any point you're right, if anybody either loses faith because they think actually this is a Ponzi scheme, or they lose faith because they say, I don't think he can pull it off. He got lucky with the pets, but go up against Jeff Bezos on everything else at scale. I don't like it. I don't see it. Then the whole thing could blow up, but it hasn't blown up yet. I'm just saying right now that is the game theory in that context. But I guess, yeah, I mean, we talked about the game theory. How does the game theory? There's so many, when I look at this, there's so many different ways to look at the game theory. Like one of the ways to sort of say, hey, and we've already alluded to this, is this shenanigans? Is this Gensler and the SEC and any kind of regulating body allowing the Citadels and the Robin Hoods to get away with it? And is the game theory, a financial nihilism and you know, is it like apes and other meme stock people, you know, playing this game versus those regulators and trying to see who blows up first? But the other game theory is it the investors, the actual investors who believe in this model that you're saying versus the short sellers? Because I really want to talk about that because I know you're a huge fan of Michael Burry. We both are. We like the when you look at the financial crisis of 2008, the short sellers like Michael Burry and all those guys that were in that Michael Lewis's Big Short movie, they were the good guys in that narrative, right? Because everyone else was like profiteering off let's clearly like it was a real estate market that had gone amok, and only the short sellers were telling the truth that this was ridiculous, right? Whereas now it seems like the short sellers are the bad guys, at least in the context of the of in some contingent of the apes minds. And this came up recently, and you sent this to me, and I just wanted to see what your thoughts were in the context of this short seller in particular for Citron. What was his name? Andrew
You left.
Andrew Left. Like what's like, are the short sellers the bad guy, and who is Andrew Left, and how do the apes see short sellers, and why are they the bad guys now when they used to be the good guys?
Yeah, Andrew Left was a famous short seller from the original 2021. And after I think after GameStop hit his high, um,
He was somebody that should have blown up, is what you're saying, in 2021.
yeah, I mean, no, he would eventually take 100% loss on his short selling in originally back in 21, and he
Yeah,
sent.
but let's be clear here, right? Like that's the thing about short selling, like actual short selling. Like 100% loss sounds like a lot, but short selling you can lose more than 100. Like
Infinite,
the potential loss are infinite, right? Like remember,
infinite, yeah.
we talked about that guy, the German billionaire on the short squeeze of VM of
Okay.
Volkswagen during the financial crisis. That guy lost billions. He lost generational wealth, his entire family's wealth, and stepped in front of a train because of it. Like
Yeah,
if if a short seller like Andrew Left loses 100% on a trade, that sounds like a lot, but like that's not, he blew up. When I say blew up, I mean goes bankrupt, loses everything. Like that can happen to short sellers, right? But that's why they have to have such conviction, right?
for sure. And so he famously I mean, was it the day after it hit its all-time high, that 320 or whatever?
Yeah.
He said GME back down to 20 fast. We know more about it. Tune in tomorrow. Some crazy tweet that never, you know, and back to 20 fast was from 320 because now the stock is sitting around 20.
Right.
But this would have meant, you know, $20 back then is 80 now. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
4-to-1 split or whatever that
But
happened.
we don't have to do the split like 320 back to 20. What he's saying is
Exactly.
it's going to go down by 16 times. Yeah.
Yeah. And it just didn't. And I guess he got would eventually, the apes were just have been dug in for whatever 3 or 4 years now. And I guess at some point, I think it was probably within the first year, he covered his position at a big loss. And
But he
so
didn't blow up.
I suppose he didn't. Yeah, he still hung around. I think him and Citron Research, right, was the
Yes. No, no, and see, this is
company.
why I can
He kind
understand
of faded into the
yeah.
background.
But then this is why I can understand the anger that people could say, hey, if it had been a true squeeze, he would have blown up. But it was just a sneeze. He was able to survive. And the question is, why was he able to survive? Did he say, hey, it's going back down to 20 because he knew something intrinsic about the company? Or did he know it's going back down to 20 because Robinhood's going to disable the buy button?
Yeah,
And Gary Gensler's going to let him get away with it.
yeah.
And he was in on it too. Then I buy it. It's not a conspiracy theory. Like the fix is in, and then here comes the river card, and our flush comes in, but then the dealer somehow takes it away again, and we got that same model again.
Hmm. So, um, so the idea is, I mean, but back to your question that why are in '08 why were short sellers the good guys? What's funny about that is these short sellers, it was still the same villains on the other side, like same as this situation, right? The villains being big money.
Mhm.
Big money was giving mortgages to everybody, right? That's what happened in '08, I think, right?
Yeah, 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 for sure.
So, and so, it's funny that it seems that big money is also the villain in the GME saga, that these guys just seem to be doing whatever they want. And now it seems like going long is the thing to do against the short sellers. I
Mhm.
think that's sort of the difference between the two.
Yeah, no, I see that. I see.
Yeah, and so when you talk about short sellers, these short sellers back in '08, they were they were they weren't big money. The idea, so that when we say short sellers in the GME saga, we're talking about hedge funds, and hedge funds that also have a market making arm. Citadel is like a hedge fund and it's a market maker,
Mhm.
which by the way, I think is what Bernie Madoff was as well, right? He was like, but his was like a true Ponzi. But you've got
Yeah,
like these, so the short sellers in the GME saga are these guys that like what Andrew Left is being accused of now, is a short and distort guy. They call it shorting and distorting, right? Like, say, oh, this company is bad for this reason, and they go on TV and then they short it and everybody sells it because, oh, this company's bad, I better sell or whatever, and they make their money off their short sales. Um and so that's the difference between, I don't know
well,
if
and I
I've.
want to be clear on it.
Mhm.
Like that's not technically illegal. Like if I'm a short seller, if I say hey, I've shorted this company and it's bad, and I think it's going to go to zero or whatever price I think it's going to go to. And then I publish market research. I say, and these are the reasons why. And again, the reasons are based on the financials of the company, or Sino Forest like says they own a bunch of trees in China, but they don't, and there's fraud. I've been able to expose fraud or something like that. That's not technically illegal. Like that's and I don't think that that's what you call it is being charged with, this Andrew.
He's being accused, yeah, with market manipulation.
Yeah,
But also being in cahoots with a couple of hedge funds.
that is definitely
Acquisition.
illegal. So
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see. This is like this just came out last week, so we don't know where that's going to go yet.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that's the question. Yeah.
So I don't know. Is that right? Did I answer
You
that right?
did. I think you
Yeah.
did. Again, it's like so many things we don't know, but it's just some of the things that makes me wonder because we, like I said, I don't know where the game theory is here in terms of, let's say, if we were playing any kind of prisoner's dilemma, who's the enemies? Who are the bear's enemies? Or sorry, who are the apes' enemies? Are they the bears, or are they the regulators, or are they the market makers, or some constellation of all of them? Because like bear like if the apes are bulls, which is they technically are. If you're owning the stock, you're a bull.
You're long.
You're long, and bears are short, obviously, and so there's a natural tension there, which is fine. I mean, anybody can take either side of a bet. What we're wanting to make sure is the bet legitimate, and will the bet be paid off? Nobody wants to be betting on something and find out that, oh, if I lose, I lose, but if I win, I still lose. That's not on. That is definitely not on. But anyway, I think we've talked it to great length. I guess at the final analysis, if I can bring it back to like you and me, so we're cousins just trying to understand the game theory of everything, but we're also cousins that are, you know, playing poker together, buying pieces of each other and talking about investing together and stuff like that. One of the questions I had, and I know I sent you, is like, as a bear, sorry, as an ape, is emotional conviction, and let's say outrage. Like I've got outrage at the theft going on by Wall Street here, whether it's some kind of collusion. Is that, I mean, if we can take a poker analogy, is that some form of tilt? Like, are we allowing, are we invested in this because we're just outraged by everything, and we're hoping for there to be, because you and I've had discussions before I started, maybe we should get out, get our money out. And you said to me, no, I'm in for the long run. I'm in for the MOAS. I want, I don't, it's like you sometimes embodied the what do we call it? Loss porn or something like that.
Yeah.
That like I'm okay with this all going to zero. I want to be part of it when it finally blows up. Like, isn't that some form of tilt? Because we try not to make poker decisions that way, right? Like it's
Yeah, I mean, and they say even investing, right?
investing, yeah.
Investing isn't supposed to be emotional either.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I don't have my life savings in it, and so you know, should you? I mean, it all depends what you want. I think if you strictly want the money
Mhm.
aspect, if you're trying to run right, play the exact numbers, then
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, no, you shouldn't. I mean, this righteousness, this tilt, what entitlement, right?
Yeah.
The
Entitlement tilt. Yeah.
entitlement of it in poker, right? You got to fold those aces on the river to afford
Straight board,
all in
flushing,
shove.
a straight flushed board. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta give up those aces. But if you know, if your goal was for a lot of people, right? It was just like, well, even you, right? I think it's like, well, maybe Rich and the Apes are right. I'll throw a little bit of money at this. Okay. Um, it was like a lottery ticket,
Yeah.
right? It's so. I mean to answer. So no, I mean investing or poker playing should never be emotional, but you might have different reasons. Like I bought a lottery ticket, and yeah, I want to see if I'm just going to hold it and see if there can be some form of justice, you know, to for these people that turn off the buy button, that for people that maybe their parents got screwed in '08 in big money doing all that shit in '08. So, I mean, what do you think? Should
No, I hear you. And I think that
I mean, why are you still in it? Right? I
well, no,
mean,
listen, I'm in it because you're in it and I'll be in it till the end because like I'm just like I think first of all, most importantly, I'm not into uh uh um lost porn and that like I think the most important thing you said was that you've invested a small amount that you can afford to lose. It's like gambling. It's like and we haven't mortgaged our house. We haven't invested a large amount of money that's going to hurt us.
mhm,
And regardless, even when we do that, we want to be rational about investing. But I think at the end of the day, it's kind of funny because it gets back to the poker hand. And this is why I chose the poker hand that I chose
mhm.
because, going into that, I sort of said, "Hey, Rich, I'm going to go into this tournament. You might be able to win 400,000 here. How much are you in for?" You said, "Oh, 400,000. I'll be in for 10% of that." And yet when I finally made decisions, I wasn't playing for 400,000. I was playing to meet Daniel Negreanu. I was playing to impress my coworker's spouse. And so I was playing for reasons other than money there.
Yeah, interesting.
And so if you say to me now, we've got a lottery ticket that could pay us a lot of money for a MOAS, that's a strict money decision. But I think part of the reason you're holding, and you've told me this, and I'll hold as well, is you're just wanting to see if that righteous MOAS happens and blows up the people that should have blown up. And if that happened and you weren't part of it, if you had sold before to make your money back, it would hurt you to not have been part of it. It's not even anything to do with the money,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Is that
yeah,
fair to say?
yeah, yeah, yeah. You want to,
And I think that that's fine, but I just think that people have to recognize that sometimes you're making decisions and it's not about the money.
Mhm,
Like if when you want something
mhm,
other than money,
mhm.
that's what you get. Even if you're playing games
Yeah.
where the score is kept by money, the
Mhm,
score is kept by money in poker and investing.
mhm,
Like in both in poker investing, the score is kept by money,
mhm,
but both in that poker tournament and in this investment,
mhm.
we're not necessarily playing only for the money. We may not be playing for the money at all.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
I just think let's be aware of that.
Mhm,
As long as we're aware of that,
mhm,
and as long as, more importantly, we're not investing a large amount of money that could hurt us,
mhm.
then I think that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we're gonna end it there. I'm tired, but I think it's a good first podcast.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue to try to explore the game theory of everything as
Yep.
best as we can through the lens that we know,
Mhm,
and maybe we'll get some insight. I don't know. Um, we're going to continue to explore this, you and I.
mhm.
There's a lot of other topics to look at, some of which maybe I'll be more of expert on, but maybe we'll bring in some other guests as well when
Yeah.
it's something that neither of us are experts on. But
Yeah, that sounds good.
all right, thanks, cuz.
All right. See you soon.
See you soon.
Well, I've been watching how the night come down. I got to feeling like I don't know how. So are we trying just to make last call? When she slammed me in the side door, I'm undercover, I'm undercover.